At the prestigious Anchor Bay Yacht Club's annual regatta dinner, I watched my husband's family toast their success while calling me just another pretty face who married for money, loud enough for the entire dining room to hear. As I stood to leave with whatever dignity remained, I leaned close to my mother-in-law's ear and whispered, "You might want to check who actually owns the marina where your precious yacht is docked." The color drained from her face as understanding began to dawn, but she had no idea that her family's humiliation was just the beginning. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished mahogany floors of my private office on the 32nd floor of the Maritime Commerce Building, where I had been conducting business for the past 8 years under a name my husband's family had never bothered to learn. Victoria Sterling Chen sat behind her executive desk, reviewing quarterly financial reports from Sterling Maritime Holdings, the company she had built from a single boat repair facility into the largest marina and maritime services operation on the eastern seaboard. My journey to this moment had begun 15 years earlier, when I was still Victoria Chen, a 22-year-old marine engineering graduate from MIT who had inherited her grandfather's struggling boat repair shop in what was then a deteriorating waterfront district. The facility consisted of 3 aging dry docks, a small office building with a leaking roof, and equipment that belonged in a maritime museum rather than a functioning business. My grandfather, Chen Wei-ming, had immigrated from Taiwan in 1963, with nothing but maritime expertise learned in the shipyards of Kaohsiung, and an unshakable belief that hard work could overcome any obstacle. He had built Chen Marine Services from absolute poverty, operating out of a converted warehouse and sleeping on a cot in his office until the business generated enough revenue to rent a small apartment nearby. Growing up, I had spent every summer working alongside my grandfather, learning to diagnose engine problems by sound, understanding the intricacies of hull design, and absorbing his philosophy that excellence in service would eventually attract success. While other children attended summer camps or vacationed with their families, I was covered in engine grease, learning to operate heavy machinery, and developing an intuitive understanding of maritime engineering that would later prove invaluable. When my grandfather passed away during my senior year at MIT, he left me the business along with a handwritten letter that I still kept framed in my office. The letter, written in his careful English mixed with Chinese characters, contained advice that had guided every major decision I had made since. "Victoria, success comes not from what others give you, but from what you build with your own hands and mind. Never let anyone make you smaller than your capabilities. The ocean does not care about your gender or your background. It respects only competence and preparation." The inheritance had come at a crucial moment in my career planning. My MIT classmates were accepting positions with major engineering firms, aerospace companies, and technology corporations that offered impressive starting salaries and clear advancement paths. The practical choice would have been to sell my grandfather's struggling business and pursue conventional career opportunities that matched my educational credentials. Instead, I made the decision that would define the next 15 years of my life. I declined job offers from Boeing, General Electric, and Raytheon to move back to the waterfront district and transform my grandfather's repair shop into something unprecedented in the regional maritime industry. The first year was a masterclass in humility and determination. I worked 16-hour days, learning aspects of business management that MIT had never covered. I studied accounting, marketing, regulatory compliance, and customer service, while simultaneously maintaining my technical responsibilities for boat repairs and engine overhauls. My initial business plan was ambitious, but carefully researched. The waterfront district was undergoing gentrification, with developers purchasing deteriorating industrial properties for conversion into luxury residential and commercial spaces. I recognized that this transformation would create demand for high-end marina services that could accommodate the expensive boats owned by wealthy professionals moving into waterfront condominiums and townhouses. However, implementing this vision required capital that I did not possess and expertise in areas that extended far beyond my engineering background. I needed to understand real estate development, luxury service management, and the social dynamics of affluent clients who expected sophisticated amenities along with technical competence. I spent nights researching successful marina operations throughout New England, studying their service offerings, pricing strategies, and customer relationship management approaches. I visited facilities in Newport, Nantucket, and Martha's Vineyard, observing how they balance technical excellence with the hospitality elements that wealthy boat owners expected from premium service providers. The breakthrough came when I identified a pattern that other marina operators had missed. Wealthy boat owners were willing to pay substantial premiums for services that combined technical expertise with convenience and luxury amenities, but most facilities focused on either technical capabilities or luxury amenities without successfully integrating both approaches. I developed a business model that would position Chen Marine Services as the premier destination for discerning boat owners who wanted world-class technical service delivered with the sophistication they expected in other aspects of their affluent lifestyles. This meant hiring not just skilled marine technicians, but also customer service professionals who could interact comfortably with clients accustomed to five-star hotels and exclusive country clubs. The transformation required every dollar of my grandfather's modest life insurance policy, plus business loans that used the property as collateral. I spent 6 months renovating the facility, installing state-of-the-art equipment, and creating customer spaces that reflected the luxury positioning I was targeting. The new Chen Marine Services opened with expanded dry dock capabilities, a customer lounge with leather furniture and panoramic water views, concierge services that could arrange everything from catering to transportation, and technical capabilities that exceeded anything available within 200 miles of our location. My first major client was Harrison Blackwood III, a real estate developer who had recently purchased a 60-foot sailing yacht that required specialized maintenance for its carbon fiber hull and advanced navigation systems. Harrison had been frustrated by service providers who either possessed the technical expertise he needed but operated in facilities that felt like industrial warehouses, or offered luxury amenities but lacked the engineering competence to properly maintain sophisticated vessels. When Harrison brought his yacht to Chen Marine Services, I personally handled the technical assessment and service recommendations. My MIT education had provided me with knowledge of advanced materials and engineering systems that most marine technicians had never encountered. I could discuss carbon fiber stress patterns, electronic navigation integration, and propulsion system optimization with the same fluency that I used to explain basic maintenance procedures to novice boat owners. The combination of technical expertise and professional presentation impressed Harrison enough that he recommended our services to other members of his sailing club. Within 18 months, Chen Marine Services had developed a reputation among affluent boat owners as the facility that could handle any technical challenge while providing service that matched their expectations for luxury and convenience. This success enabled me to expand the business beyond repair services into marina operations, boat storage, and marine services that generated recurring revenue rather than depending entirely on project-based repair work. I purchased adjacent waterfront properties as they became available, gradually assembling the land area that would eventually become Sterling Marina. The transformation from Chen Marine Services to Sterling Marina required 3 years of careful planning and strategic investment. I hired maritime architects to design dock facilities that could accommodate boats ranging from 20-foot pleasure craft to 100-foot luxury yachts. The marina featured amenities that rivaled resort hotels, including a waterfront restaurant, fitness facilities, and concierge services that could arrange anything from boat provisioning to helicopter transportation. By the time Sterling Marina opened, I had invested everything I owned, plus additional financing secured through my business reputation and demonstrated track record of success. The facility represented the culmination of my grandfather's immigrant dream and my own vision of what American entrepreneurship could achieve through combining technical competence with strategic thinking and relentless commitment to excellence. The marina's success exceeded my most optimistic projections. Within 2 years, we had achieved full occupancy with a waiting list of prospective clients seeking dock space. The combination of technical excellence, luxury amenities, and customer service had created a business model that generated substantial profit margins while building customer loyalty that translated into referrals and repeat business. This success allowed me to expand Sterling Maritime Holdings into additional properties throughout New England. I acquired struggling marinas in desirable locations, applied the same transformation strategy that had worked at Sterling Marina, and created a network of premium facilities that dominated the luxury boat services market in the region. By my 30th birthday, Sterling Maritime Holdings controlled 12 marina properties, employed over 200 people, and generated annual revenue exceeding $50 million. I had achieved financial success that surpassed anything my MIT classmates had accomplished in traditional engineering careers, while creating a business that honored my grandfather's legacy and provided meaningful employment for working-class families in waterfront communities. However, my business success remained largely invisible to the social circles I entered when I met and married James Sterling 2 years later. James was a trust fund beneficiary whose family had accumulated wealth through real estate investments and financial management services that required no active involvement from family members. His income derived from investment portfolios managed by professional firms, rather than businesses he had built or professions he had mastered. When James introduced me to his family as his fiancée, they saw a young woman with an engineering degree who had married into their social class rather than a successful business owner who had achieved financial independence through entrepreneurial accomplishment. The assumption that I had married James for his money was so automatic that no one in his family ever asked detailed questions about my background or professional activities. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. This misunderstanding was reinforced by my decision to use a hyphenated name after marriage, while maintaining complete separation between my personal and professional identities. Sterling Maritime Holdings continued to operate under my original business name and corporate structure, while Victoria Sterling Chen participated in social activities and charitable events associated with James's family without discussing her business responsibilities or achievements. The separation served practical purposes beyond privacy preferences. My business clients appreciated dealing with an owner-operator who could make immediate decisions about technical and service issues without consulting family members or business partners. Maintaining professional independence also protected Sterling Maritime Holdings from potential complications that could arise from James's family learning about the company's success and attempting to influence business decisions or claim involvement in achievements they had not contributed to creating. For 8 years, this arrangement had worked effectively. James understood that I managed successful business interests without needing details about specific operations or financial performance. His family assumed that my professional activities were modest consulting work or charitable involvements that occupied my time without generating substantial income or requiring serious attention. The deception was not malicious, but rather a recognition that James's family measured worth through inherited wealth and social connections, rather than entrepreneurial achievement or professional competence. They valued family pedigree and educational credentials from elite institutions above business success or technical expertise, particularly when those accomplishments belonged to women who had not been born into their social class. This morning, as I reviewed Sterling Maritime Holdings' quarterly report showing record profitability across all 12 properties, I reflected on the irony of my situation. The same people who dismissed me as a trophy wife whose primary qualification was physical attractiveness were about to discover that their comfortable lifestyle and social status depended on Marina services provided by the woman they had consistently underestimated and marginalized. The revelation was not something I had planned or anticipated, but rather the inevitable result of James's family's increasing arrogance and their assumption that their wealth and social position protected them from consequences of treating others with contempt and condescension. Tonight's regatta dinner at Anchor Bay Yacht Club would provide the perfect setting for this revelation, as the Sterling family yacht, along with boats owned by their closest friends and business associates, occupied premium dock spaces at Sterling Marina under long-term contracts that generated substantial revenue for my company while making their luxurious lifestyle possible. As I prepared to leave my office and attend the evening's festivities, I wondered how James's family would respond when they learned that the woman they had dismissed as intellectually inferior and financially dependent actually controlled the maritime infrastructure that enabled their recreational activities and social prominence. The thought brought a smile to my face as I locked my office and headed toward what would undoubtedly be the most interesting dinner conversation of my marriage. The Sterling family compound occupied 12 acres of prime waterfront real estate in the exclusive Beacon Hills neighborhood, where property values began at $8 million and the annual association fees exceeded most people's salaries. The main house, a Georgian colonial mansion built in 1923, commanded panoramic views of the harbor while serving as headquarters for a family whose wealth had been accumulating for 4 generations without requiring any member to demonstrate particular competence or ambition. James Sterling I Vth had inherited his position as family patriarch not through leadership ability or business acumen, but simply by surviving longer than his siblings and maintaining cordial relationships with the investment managers who controlled the family trusts. At 68, he possessed the comfortable confidence that comes from never having experienced financial uncertainty or professional failure, largely because he had never engaged in activities that involved meaningful risk or personal accountability. His wife, Margaret Whitmore Sterling, had married into the family 43 years earlier, after graduating from Vassar with a degree in art history that had never been applied to any productive purpose, beyond organizing charity galas and museum fundraising events. Margaret's primary accomplishments involved managing household staff, coordinating social events, and maintaining the family's reputation within social circles, where appearance and connections mattered more than achievement or character. Their eldest son, James Sterling V, had followed the predictable path of elite private schools, an Ivy League education that emphasized networking over learning, and a career in investment banking that leveraged family connections rather than analytical capabilities. At 42, James V managed a portfolio of inherited assets while pursuing recreational activities that reinforced his social status among other trust fund beneficiaries, who measured success through luxury consumption rather than productive contribution. My husband, James Sterling VI, represented the 4th generation of this comfortable mediocrity. At 38, he possessed sufficient charm and social graces to navigate elite social circles, while lacking the drive or vision that might have led to independent achievement. His income derived entirely from family trusts managed by professional firms, leaving him free to pursue interests in sailing, golf, and charitable board positions that required attendance at meetings but little actual responsibility. The Sterling family's wealth had originated with James Sterling I, who had demonstrated genuine entrepreneurial ability by building a successful textile manufacturing business during the industrial expansion of the early 20th century. However, each subsequent generation had become more removed from productive activity, transforming inherited assets into investment portfolios while adopting lifestyles that emphasized leisure and social position over professional accomplishment. This pattern of declining engagement with productive work was not uncommon among established wealthy families, but the Sterlings had embraced their parasitic relationship with inherited wealth more completely than most. They viewed business ownership and professional careers as activities for people who lacked sufficient family resources to avoid such necessities, failing to understand that meaningful work provided satisfaction and identity that passive wealth accumulation could never replace. My introduction to the Sterling family dynamics had occurred during my engagement to James, when I was invited to Sunday dinner at the family compound and subjected to the subtle interrogation techniques that wealthy families employed to assess potential additions to their social circle. The questions were carefully designed to determine my background, my family's financial status, and most importantly, my motivations for marrying into their elevated social position. Margaret had conducted this examination with the skill of a prosecutor, asking seemingly innocent questions about my childhood, my parents, occupations, and my professional plans that were actually attempts to determine whether I represented a financial threat or social embarrassment to family reputation. The assumption underlying every inquiry was that any woman marrying James must be motivated primarily by access to sterling wealth and social status. When I mentioned my engineering degree from MIT, the family's reaction had been politely dismissive rather than impressed. Technical education was viewed as evidence of middle-class background rather than intellectual achievement, something that practical people pursued when they lacked family resources that made professional careers unnecessary. The possibility that I might have entrepreneurial ambitions or significant business capabilities never entered their consideration. This attitude had persisted throughout my 8-year marriage, with family members consistently treating my professional activities as harmless hobbies that occupied my time without generating serious income or requiring meaningful expertise. When I attended business meetings or traveled for work purposes, the family assumed these activities were charitable involvements or social commitments rather than responsibilities associated with managing a substantial business operation. The Sterling family's blindness to my professional achievements was reinforced by their social circle, where wives were expected to contribute to family status through charitable work, cultural activities, and social connections, rather than independent business success. Women who pursued serious careers were viewed as either unfortunate individuals who lacked sufficient family resources to avoid such necessities, or ambitious climbers who sought professional recognition to compensate for modest backgrounds. This environment had made it relatively easy to maintain separation between my identity as Victoria Sterling Chen, wife of a trust fund beneficiary, and my role as the owner and chief executive of Sterling Maritime Holdings. The Sterling family's lack of curiosity about business operations that did not directly affect their investment portfolios meant that they never asked detailed questions about my professional activities or attempted to understand the scope and success of my maritime business empire. The irony of this situation was that the Sterling family's recreational lifestyle depended extensively on services provided by my company, without their recognition of this relationship. The family yacht, a 75-foot sailing vessel named Sterling Legacy, occupied a premium berth at Sterling Marina under a long-term contract that generated substantial annual revenue for my business. The boat's maintenance, storage, and concierge services were provided by my employees, using equipment that I had purchased and facilities that I had designed and constructed. Beyond the direct services provided to Sterling family vessels, my marina operations supported the broader social network that enabled their lifestyle and status. The majority of boats docked at Sterling Marina belonged to wealthy families who comprised the Sterling family's social circle, creating a maritime community where business relationships and personal friendships overlapped in ways that the Sterling family had never bothered to understand or investigate. This oversight extended to other members of their social circle who had similarly failed to research the ownership structure of the facilities they used regularly. Harrison Blackwood III, who had been my first major client and had recommended my services to the Sterling family, remained unaware that the young woman he had dismissed as James's trophy wife was actually the business owner who had transformed his sailing experience and significantly increased the value of his maritime investments. The Whitmore family, Margaret's relatives who maintained their own boats at Sterling Marina, had never connected Victoria Sterling Chen with the Chen Marine Services that had evolved into Sterling Maritime Holdings. They continued to treat me with the condescending politeness reserved for younger women who had married above their social class, unaware that their recreational activities were facilitated by my business expertise and entrepreneurial success. Dr. Richard Hampton, a prominent surgeon whose family had socialized with the Sterlings for decades, had often made comments about the challenges of managing successful medical practices, while expressing sympathy for women like me who lacked professional accomplishments that could provide meaningful work and personal fulfillment. His own yacht required specialized maintenance services that only my company could provide in the regional market, yet he remained oblivious to this relationship. These patterns of blindness and assumption had created a situation where an entire social network of wealthy individuals depended on my business operations, while simultaneously dismissing my capabilities and achievements. Their comfort and status were enabled by my entrepreneurial success, yet their prejudices prevented them from recognizing this fundamental contradiction in their attitudes and behavior. The most frustrating aspect of this dynamic was not the personal disrespect, which I had learned to ignore, but the broader implications for other women who might face similar prejudices and dismissive treatment. The Sterling family's attitudes reflected widespread assumptions about women's capabilities and motivations that could limit opportunities for female entrepreneurs and business leaders who did not have the luxury of maintaining separate personal and professional identities. My success had been achieved despite rather than because of my marriage into the Sterling family, yet their social circle assumed that any professional accomplishments I might possess were either insignificant compared to my access to Sterling wealth, or dependent on family connections rather than independent expertise and effort. This assumption diminished not only my achievements, but the possibility that other women in similar situations might possess capabilities and accomplishments that warranted recognition and respect. The Sterling family's wealth had insulated them from consequences of their prejudices and dismissive attitudes, creating an environment where they could maintain comfortable assumptions about other people's motivations and capabilities without being challenged by contrary evidence. Their social position allowed them to surround themselves with individuals who either shared their prejudices or were financially dependent on their approval, preventing the kind of honest feedback that might have encouraged more accurate and respectful assessment of others' worth and achievements. This protective bubble of wealth and status had also prevented the Sterling family from developing the skills and perspectives that might have enabled them to recognize entrepreneurial success when they encountered it. Having never built businesses themselves or worked alongside successful entrepreneurs, they lacked the knowledge and experience necessary to identify the characteristics and capabilities that distinguished genuine business achievement from inherited wealth or social connections. The maritime industry required technical expertise, operational management skills, customer relationship capabilities, and strategic thinking that could not be acquired through social connections or family wealth alone. My success had required mastering complex engineering principles, understanding regulatory frameworks, managing substantial construction projects, and developing service delivery systems that could satisfy demanding clients while generating sustainable profit margins. These accomplishments represented exactly the kind of practical intelligence and business acumen that the Sterling family claimed to value in their investment decisions and business partnerships, yet they remained unable to recognize these qualities when they appeared in contexts that challenged their preconceived notions about women's capabilities and motivations. The evening's regatta dinner would provide an opportunity to test whether the Sterling family could acknowledge and respect business achievement when it was revealed in circumstances that made denial impossible. Their response would demonstrate whether their prejudices were merely casual assumptions that could be corrected through education and evidence, or fundamental attitudes that would persist even when confronted with unmistakable proof of their errors and limitations. As I selected jewelry and accessories that would complement my evening gown, I reflected on the broader significance of the evening's potential revelations. The Sterling family's reaction would serve as a case study in how established wealth and social position could either enable growth and learning or reinforce comfortable prejudices that prevented accurate assessment of other people's worth and potential contributions to society. The stakes of this revelation extended beyond personal vindication or family dynamics to questions about how successful women navigate social environments that may not be prepared to recognize or respect their achievements. The evening would test whether truth and evidence could overcome prejudice and assumption, or whether some individuals were too invested in their comfortable misconceptions to acknowledge reality when it contradicted their preferred narratives. My preparation for the evening included not only selecting appropriate attire and accessories, but also considering how to present information about Sterling Maritime Holdings in ways that would maximize impact while maintaining the dignity and professionalism that had characterized my business operations. The revelation needed to be clear and undeniable, but delivered with the class and competence that would reinforce rather than undermine the business reputation I had worked years to establish and maintain. As I applied the final touches to my makeup and prepared to join James for the drive to Anchor Bay Yacht Club, I felt a mixture of anticipation and satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge or personal gratification. Tonight would provide an opportunity to demonstrate that assumptions about people's capabilities and worth could be not only wrong but counterproductive for everyone involved in maintaining them. The Sterling family was about to discover that their comfortable prejudices had prevented them from recognizing and appreciating genuine accomplishment in their own family, while their dismissive attitudes had created unnecessary barriers to relationships that might have been mutually beneficial if based on respect and accurate understanding rather than assumption and condescension. The morning of the regatta dinner began with an emergency conference call at 7 a.m. that would test every business leadership skill I had developed over 8 years of building Sterling Maritime Holdings. Marcus Chen, my operations director and nephew of my late grandfather, was calling from Sterling Marina's main facility, where overnight storms had caused significant damage to the northern dock section that housed some of our most valuable client vessels. "Victoria, we have a situation." Marcus began without preamble, his voice carrying the controlled urgency I had learned to associate with genuine crises rather than routine operational challenges. The storm surge last night exceeded our projections by 18 inches, and the wave action compromised the structural integrity of docks 7 through 12. We have 23 boats in that section, including the Sterling Legacy and Harrison Blackwood's new 70-footer. I closed my eyes and mentally calculated the financial and reputational implications of this crisis. The boats in the affected section represented over $40 million in client assets, while the dock infrastructure itself had cost nearly $2 million to construct and install just 3 years earlier. More critically, the timing of this emergency threatened to disrupt the regatta dinner, where many of our most important clients would be expecting to discuss their boats' condition and our facility's reliability. "What's the immediate assessment?" I asked, already moving toward my laptop to access the Marina's security camera system and weather monitoring equipment that provided real-time data about conditions at all Sterling Maritime Holdings facilities. Marcus had prepared for this question with a thoroughness that made him invaluable during crisis situations. The structural damage is concentrated in the connector joints between dock sections 7 and 9, where the wave action created lateral stress that exceeded design specifications. We can stabilize the situation temporarily, but permanent repairs will require removing all vessels from the affected area and rebuilding approximately 300 feet of dock infrastructure. This was precisely the type of crisis that separated competent marina operators from industry leaders. The technical challenges were significant, but solvable, while the customer service implications required sophisticated communication and relationship management strategies that could either strengthen or destroy client confidence in our capabilities and reliability. I had encountered similar situations during Sterling Maritime Holdings' early years, when unexpected equipment failures or severe weather events had threatened to undermine the business reputation we were working to establish. Each crisis had provided opportunities to demonstrate our commitment to client service, while developing operational procedures that prevented similar problems in the future. "How long for temporary stabilization?" I asked, simultaneously reviewing weather forecasts and assessing the availability of emergency equipment and personnel that would be required for immediate response efforts. 4 hours if we mobilize both emergency crews and bring in additional materials from the Gloucester facility," Marcus replied, referring to the comprehensive disaster response protocols we had developed after a similar crisis 3 years earlier, had taught us the importance of maintaining redundant equipment and cross-trained personnel at multiple locations. This response time would allow us to secure the affected vessels and restore basic dock functionality before afternoon activities at the yacht club would require clients to access their boats. However, the permanent repairs would take approximately 2 weeks and cost an estimated $300,000 that had not been budgeted for this quarter. More immediately, the crisis required delicate communication with affected clients who would need to understand the situation while maintaining confidence in our ability to protect their valuable vessels and restore full service capability. These conversations would need to balance transparency about the challenges we faced with reassurance about our professional competence and commitment to client satisfaction. "Begin stabilization immediately," I instructed, already developing a communication strategy that would address client concerns while demonstrating the crisis management capabilities that distinguish Sterling Maritime Holdings from competitors who might handle similar situations less professionally. "I'll handle client notifications personally, starting with the highest value vessels and working through the complete list systematically." The next 3 hours required the kind of multitasking and crisis leadership that business schools attempted to teach through case studies, but could only be truly learned through real-world experience managing complex operations under pressure. I coordinated emergency response activities while simultaneously conducting individual phone calls with 23 boat owners who needed specific information about their vessels, condition, and our recovery timeline. These conversations revealed the relationship capital that Sterling Maritime Holdings had accumulated through 8 years of exceptional service and professional integrity. Rather than panic or threats to move their boats to competitor facilities, clients expressed confidence in our ability to handle the situation effectively, while offering assistance and support that reflected genuine respect for our operational capabilities. Harrison Blackwood's response was particularly meaningful. "Victoria, I've seen how you handle challenges, and I have complete confidence that you'll resolve this situation better than any other marina operator in the region could manage," he said when I called to discuss the condition of his 70-foot sailing yacht. "Let me know if you need additional resources, or if there's anything I can do to help coordinate with other affected owners." This level of client loyalty and trust represented years of consistent performance and relationship building that could not be purchased or faked. It reflected the business philosophy my grandfather had instilled during my childhood summers working in his repair shop. technical competence and professional integrity would eventually create customer relationships that could survive temporary setbacks and occasional crises. By noon, the emergency stabilization was complete. All affected vessels were secure, and detailed repair plans had been developed for both the dock infrastructure and 2 boats that had sustained minor damage during the storm surge. The crisis had been managed professionally and efficiently, demonstrating exactly the kind of operational excellence that had built Sterling Maritime Holdings' reputation as the region's premier marina operator. However, the morning's emergency response had consumed time and energy that I had planned to use for preparation for the evening's regatta dinner. The crisis management had also reminded me of the substantial responsibilities and pressures associated with operating a business that managed millions of dollars in client assets, while employing over 200 people whose livelihoods depended on our continued success and growth. These responsibilities represented the reality of entrepreneurial leadership that was invisible to individuals like the Sterling family, who assumed that business ownership primarily involved enjoying profits generated by other people's work, rather than managing complex operations that required constant attention and periodic crisis response. The morning's emergency had provided a perfect example of why business success required capabilities that could not be inherited or acquired through social connections alone. As I prepared to leave my office and return home to prepare for the evening's social event, I reflected on the contrast between the meaningful work I had just completed and the superficial conversations that would dominate tonight's yacht club gathering. The Sterling family and their social circle would spend the evening discussing recreational sailing, vacation destinations, and social gossip while remaining oblivious to the business operations and professional expertise that made their comfortable lifestyle possible. This disconnect was not merely amusing, but represented a broader cultural problem in how society valued different types of contribution and achievement. The individuals attending tonight's dinner would receive social recognition and respect based on inherited wealth and family connections, rather than productive work or meaningful contribution to economic activity and employment creation. Meanwhile, the emergency response team that had spent the morning protecting millions of dollars in client assets while ensuring the safety and security of valuable vessels would remain invisible to the social elite who benefited from their professional competence and dedication. This inversion of recognition and respect reflected societal priorities that rewarded passive wealth accumulation over active business leadership and operational excellence. The afternoon was spent in final preparations for permanent dock repairs, coordination with insurance adjusters and marine construction contractors, and development of communication materials that would keep all Sterling Maritime Holdings clients informed about our recovery progress and timeline. These activities required the same attention to detail and strategic thinking that had built our business reputation, yet they would be invisible to tonight's yacht club audience who assumed that Marina services somehow provided themselves without requiring professional management or business expertise. At 4 p.m., I finally left the office and returned home to prepare for an evening that would serve multiple purposes beyond social obligation. The regatta dinner would provide opportunities to strengthen relationships with important clients who had demonstrated confidence in our crisis management capabilities, while also revealing to the Sterling family the true nature of the professional responsibilities they had consistently dismissed and undervalued. The irony of the situation was that the morning's emergency had actually strengthened my position for the evening's potential confrontation. The successful crisis response had demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership and operational competence that distinguished genuine business achievement from inherited wealth or social position. Any revelation about Sterling Maritime Holdings ownership would now be reinforced by concrete evidence of professional capabilities that could not be dismissed or minimized. As I selected attire for the evening that would convey both social appropriateness and professional authority, I considered how the day's events had prepared me for whatever conflicts might emerge at the yacht club. The morning had reminded me of my actual accomplishments and responsibilities, providing confidence that was based on demonstrated competence rather than social position or family connections. The Sterling family's attitudes and behavior over 8 years of marriage had never seriously threatened my self-confidence, because my identity and self-respect were grounded in professional achievement and business success that existed independently of their recognition or approval. Their dismissive treatment was annoying and occasionally frustrating, but it could not undermine the fundamental satisfaction that came from building something meaningful through expertise and effort. This evening would test whether the Sterling family was capable of growth and learning when confronted with evidence that contradicted their comfortable assumptions, or whether their prejudices were too fundamental to their worldview to be modified by mere facts. Their response would reveal as much about their character and limitations as it would about their attitudes toward women's capabilities and achievements. The broader significance of tonight's potential revelation extended beyond personal vindication to questions about how society could better recognize and reward genuine contribution and achievement, while reducing the unearned advantages that inherited wealth provided to individuals who had not demonstrated comparable capabilities or character. My grandfather's immigrant experience had taught him that American society offered opportunities for advancement through work and achievement, but his grandson's marriage had revealed that established wealthy families often remained insulated from the competitive pressures and performance standards that motivated excellence in others. This protection from consequences could lead to complacency and prejudice that diminished both personal development and social contribution. The Sterling family represented a test case in whether privileged individuals could transcend the limitations of their comfortable circumstances to appreciate and respect achievement in others, particularly when that achievement challenged their assumptions about social hierarchy and personal worth. Their reaction to learning about Sterling Maritime Holdings would reveal whether wealth and status had made them incapable of recognizing excellence that originated outside their familiar social categories. As evening approached and James returned home from his afternoon sailing activities, I felt prepared for whatever conversations and confrontations the night might bring. The morning's crisis management had reminded me of my actual capabilities and responsibilities, while the successful resolution had provided fresh evidence of the professional competence that the Sterling family had consistently failed to recognize or appreciate. Tonight would determine whether truth and evidence could overcome prejudice and assumption, or whether some individuals were too invested in their comfortable misconceptions to acknowledge reality, even when it directly contradicted their preferred narratives about other people's worth and capabilities. The Anchor Bay Yacht Club had stood as a monument to maritime tradition and social exclusivity since 1892, when railroad barons and shipping magnates had established the institution as a retreat from the commercial pressures that had generated their substantial fortunes. The clubhouse, a magnificent example of shingle-style architecture, commanded sweeping views of the harbor while housing dining rooms, meeting facilities, and social spaces that had witnessed more than a century of business negotiations, political discussions, and social ceremonies among the region's most influential families. Tonight, the club's main dining room had been transformed for the annual regatta dinner, an event that combined celebration of sailing achievements with networking opportunities and social positioning that extended far beyond recreational boating. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables adorned with nautical-themed centerpieces, while floor-to-ceiling windows provided dramatic views of the harbor, where dozens of illuminated yachts created a floating display of wealth and maritime passion. James and I arrived precisely at 7:30, timing calculated to avoid appearing either overeager or fashionably late in ways that might draw unnecessary attention to our entrance. James wore his navy blazer with the yacht club's distinctive gold buttons, while I had selected a midnight blue silk dress that conveyed sophistication without ostentation, paired with the sapphire necklace that had belonged to my grandmother and represented the only substantial jewelry I owned that carried personal meaning rather than social signaling. The cocktail reception was already in full swing when we entered the club's main foyer, where members and guests mingled with the practiced ease that characterized individuals accustomed to social events, where business relationships and personal friendships intertwined in complex patterns of mutual obligation and strategic networking. The conversations buzzed with discussions of sailing conditions, boat maintenance challenges, and vacation destinations, punctuated by references to business dealings and investment opportunities that reflected the overlap between recreational sailing and professional success. Margaret Sterling approached us within minutes of our arrival, her smile combining maternal warmth with the calculated assessment that characterized her interactions with family members whose behavior might reflect upon the Sterling reputation. She wore an emerald green evening gown that complemented her silver hair and conveyed exactly the level of understated elegance that was expected from women of her social position and generational perspective. "Victoria, you look lovely this evening," she said, her voice carrying the tone of approval that suggested she'd examined my appearance and found it acceptable for the occasion. "I trust you had a relaxing day preparing for tonight's festivities, unlike those of us who had to manage various complications and responsibilities." The comment was delivered with Margaret's characteristic skill at conveying criticism through apparent pleasantries, suggesting that my presumed lack of serious obligations had afforded me luxury of extensive preparation time that was unavailable to individuals managing substantial responsibilities. The implication was clear: my primary function was ornamental rather than productive, allowing me to focus on appearance and social performance while others handled meaningful work and decision-making. Actually, I spent most of the day managing an emergency situation at one of my business properties, I replied with pleasant neutrality, providing accurate information while avoiding details that might prompt questions I was not yet prepared to answer comprehensively. Sometimes unexpected challenges require immediate attention, regardless of social commitments. Quote, Margaret's expression shifted slightly, suggesting mild surprise that I would claim professional responsibilities that could conflict with social obligations. Her worldview assumed that women in my position might have charitable commitments or hobby interests, but nothing that could legitimately be described as emergency business management, requiring immediate personal attention and decision-making authority. How interesting. She responded with the kind of polite dismissal that indicated her assumption that any business property I might reference was likely a small investment or consultation arrangement rather than substantial operational responsibility. I hope you were able to resolve whatever minor issue arose without too much inconvenience. Before I could respond to this characterization, Harrison Blackwood III approached our conversation group with the confident stride that reflected his comfort within the club's social environment and his recognition as one of the evening's honored guests whose sailing achievements had contributed to the regatta's success. His presence immediately shifted the conversation's dynamic, as both James and Margaret accorded him the respectful attention that his business success and club leadership position commanded. James, Victoria, wonderful to see you both, Harrison said with genuine warmth that distinguished him from other club members whose social interactions were more calculated and performative. Victoria, I wanted to thank you again for the excellent work your people did this morning with the dock situation. The professionalism and efficiency were exactly what we've come to expect, and I know the other affected owners share my appreciation for how well the crisis was handled. Margaret's eyebrows rose slightly at this reference to business activities that seemed to involve more substantial responsibility than she had assumed I possessed. Her expression suggested curiosity mixed with skepticism about the nature of my apparent involvement in marina operations that had affected Harrison's valuable sailing yacht and required professional crisis management capabilities. I wasn't aware that Victoria was involved in marina management, Margaret said carefully, her voice carrying the tone of someone seeking clarification about a situation that did not align with her existing understanding of family members' professional activities and responsibilities. Harrison looked genuinely surprised at Margaret's apparent ignorance about my professional role, his expression suggesting that he assumed family members would naturally be aware of each other's business activities and achievements. His response would prove to be the first crack in the careful separation I had maintained between my personal and professional identities. Victoria's operation is the finest marina facility on the entire eastern seaboard, Harrison replied with enthusiasm that reflected his genuine appreciation for Sterling Maritime Holdings, service quality and operational excellence. The technical expertise and customer service are exceptional, and the facility management is absolutely first-rate. We've had our boat there for 3 years, and the experience has been outstanding in every respect. The conversation paused as Margaret processed this information, her expression indicating confusion about how her daughter-in-law could be operating a marina facility without her knowledge or understanding. James appeared equally puzzled, though his confusion seemed to stem from uncertainty about the scope of my business activities rather than complete ignorance of their existence. Dr. Richard Hampton joined the conversation at this moment, his arrival adding another perspective that would further complicate the evening's social dynamics. Richard had known the Sterling family for decades and maintained his own yacht at Sterling Marina, though he had never connected the facility's ownership with my identity as James's wife and Margaret's daughter-in-law. "Are we discussing marina facilities?" Richard asked with the jovial confidence that characterized his social interactions at the yacht club. "I must say the new management at Sterling Marina has been absolutely exceptional. The quality of service and the facility improvements over the past few years have been remarkable. Whoever owns that operation certainly knows how to run a first-class maritime business." Margaret's expression was becoming increasingly strained, as multiple club members referenced a Marina operation that apparently involved me in ways that contradicted her understanding of my professional activities and capabilities. The conversation was revealing information that challenged fundamental assumptions about family relationships and individual achievements that she had maintained for 8 years. "I seem to be missing something important about Victoria's professional activities," Margaret said with the careful tone of someone attempting to gather information while avoiding the appearance of family discord or communication failures. "Perhaps you could clarify the nature of your involvement with this Marina that Harrison and Richard are discussing." The moment had arrived when maintaining separation between my personal and professional identities was no longer possible or appropriate. The evening's social dynamics had created a situation where direct questions demanded honest answers that would either reveal the truth about Sterling Maritime Holdings, ownership, or require deceptive responses that would compromise my personal integrity and professional reputation. Sterling Marina is one of 12 facilities operated by Sterling Maritime Holdings, the company I founded 8 years ago, I said with quiet clarity that allowed the information to register fully before continuing. "We provide premium marina services throughout New England, specializing in luxury vessel management and waterfront property development." The silence that followed this statement was profound, as Margaret, James, and other nearby conversation participants processed information that fundamentally altered their understanding of my identity, capabilities, and achievements. The revelation recontextualized every assumption they had made about my professional activities, financial independence, and business expertise over the course of our 8-year relationship. Margaret was the first to respond, her voice carrying a tone of disbelief mixed with the beginning recognition that her dismissive attitudes toward my capabilities had been based on incomplete and inaccurate information about my actual professional accomplishments and business success. "You own Sterling Marina?" she asked, her question indicating that she was beginning to understand the implications of this revelation for her family's relationship with the facility that housed their yacht and provided services they had always assumed were managed by unknown business entities rather than family members. "Sterling Maritime Holdings owns and operates Sterling Marina along with 11 other premium marina facilities throughout New England," I clarified, providing information that expanded the scope of the revelation beyond a single property to a substantial business empire that represented years of entrepreneurial achievement and operational excellence. Harrison's expression shifted to one of amused respect as he realized the irony of the situation he had unknowingly participated in for years. "You mean to tell me that I've been recommending your services to other club members without realizing that you were James's wife?" he asked with a laugh that reflected appreciation for the elegant way I had managed the intersection of personal and professional relationships. The conversation was attracting attention from other club members who sensed that something significant was being revealed within their social circle. Charles Whitmore, Margaret's brother, approached with curiosity about the discussion that seemed to be generating unusual interest and emotional reactions among participants. "What's all the excitement about?" Charles asked with the casual confidence of someone accustomed to being included in important conversations and social developments within the club's membership. "We're just learning that Victoria owns the marina where most of our boats are docked," Richard explained with amusement that reflected his appreciation for the surprise revelation. "It appears that we've been praising the exceptional service without realizing we were complimenting a family member." Charles's expression indicated the same confusion and disbelief that had characterized other family members, reactions to information that contradicted their long-standing assumptions about my professional status and business capabilities. His response would contribute to the growing realization that the Sterling family's understanding of my identity and achievements had been fundamentally incomplete and inaccurate. The revelation was spreading through the cocktail reception as club members shared information about the surprising connection between Victoria Sterling Chen and the marina operation that served many of their vessels. The news created a buzz of conversation that reflected genuine interest in the business success that had been hidden within their social circle for years. James had remained largely silent during these revelations, his expression suggesting internal processing of information that required significant adjustment to his understanding of our marriage and my independent professional identity. His reaction would prove crucial for determining how the family would respond to learning about achievements that they had never recognized or acknowledged, The evening was transforming from a routine social event into a moment of truth that would test whether the Sterling family could acknowledge and respect business achievement when it originated from sources they had not expected or previously recognized. Their response would reveal essential information about their character, values, and capacity for growth and learning when confronted with evidence that challenged comfortable assumptions and prejudices. As the cocktail reception continued, I found myself at the center of conversations that had shifted from polite social pleasantries to genuine discussions of business operations, entrepreneurial achievement, and professional expertise that commanded respect from individuals who had previously dismissed my capabilities and contributions. The transformation was both satisfying and challenging, as it required navigating complex social dynamics while maintaining the professional dignity and personal integrity that had characterized my business operations and family relationships throughout 8 years of careful balance between competing identities and obligations. The formal dinner service commenced at 8:30, with club members and their guests taking assigned seats at tables arranged to optimize both harbor views and social interaction among individuals whose business relationships and personal friendships created a complex network of mutual interests and obligations. The Sterling family had been seated at the captain's table, a position of honor that reflected their long-standing membership and substantial financial contributions to club operations and sailing programs. I found myself positioned between James and Dr. Patricia Caldwell, a prominent maritime attorney whose legal practice specialized in admiralty law and yacht registration issues that affected many club members. Patricia had built her reputation through meticulous attention to regulatory compliance and contractual negotiations that protected her clients' substantial maritime investments, while ensuring proper legal documentation for complex ownership structures and commercial arrangements. The conversation during the first course centered on sailing conditions and regatta results, with participants sharing observations about wind patterns, racing strategies, and vessel performance that demonstrated the technical expertise that distinguished serious sailors from casual recreational boaters. These discussions revealed the depth of maritime knowledge that club members possessed, reflecting years of experience and substantial investment in understanding sailing techniques and boat handling capabilities. Margaret Sterling dominated much of the early conversation, sharing observations about sailing competition and club activities with the authoritative tone that reflected her decades of involvement in yacht club social functions and maritime community leadership. Her commentary demonstrated familiarity with racing protocols, sailing traditions, and club history that established her credibility within the group while reinforcing her position as a respected voice in maritime social circles. However, the dynamic shifted significantly when Patricia Caldwell turned her attention to recent developments in marina operations and maritime business management that had attracted her professional interest as an attorney representing boat owners and maritime service providers. "I've been following the expansion of Sterling Maritime Holdings with considerable interest," Patricia began, her voice carrying the analytical tone that characterized her approach to legal and business matters. "The company has achieved remarkable growth while maintaining service quality that exceeds industry standards. The ownership structure and operational strategy represent innovative approaches to maritime business development that could serve as models for other regional operators." Margaret's expression indicated polite interest mixed with curiosity about why Patricia would assume that anyone at the table possessed detailed knowledge about a maritime business operation that seemed peripheral to their immediate social circle and recreational interests. "Are you familiar with Sterling Maritime's operations?" Margaret asked, her question reflecting genuine uncertainty about why this topic had been introduced into their dinner conversation. Patricia appeared surprised by the question, her expression suggesting that she assumed the connection between Sterling Maritime Holdings and the Sterling family would be obvious to all table participants. Her response would prove to be a pivotal moment in the evening's unfolding revelation. "Well, certainly," Patricia replied with mild confusion about Margaret's apparent ignorance regarding a business relationship that she assumed was well established and openly acknowledged. "Victoria's company has become the premier marina operator in New England. The technical expertise and customer service excellence are exceptional, and the facility management sets industry standards for luxury maritime services." The silence that followed this statement was profound, as Margaret processed information that fundamentally altered her understanding of family relationships and individual achievements that she had maintained for 8 years. Her expression indicated the beginning recognition that her assumptions about my professional activities and business capabilities had been completely inaccurate. James appeared equally stunned, though his reaction seemed to reflect surprise about the scope and recognition of business activities that he had understood existed, but had never fully comprehended in terms of their significance within the maritime industry and business community. Charles Whitmore, who had been listening to the conversation with increasing attention, leaned forward with the expression of someone attempting to clarify information that seemed to contradict his existing understanding of family dynamics and professional relationships. Patricia, when you reference Victoria's company, are you indicating that she owns Sterling Maritime Holdings? Charles asked with careful precision that reflected his background in financial management and his experience evaluating business operations and ownership structures. Of course, Patricia responded with matter-of-fact confidence that indicated her assumption that this information was common knowledge among family members and close associates. Victoria founded the company 8 years ago and has built it into the most successful marina operation on the eastern seaboard. The business achievement is remarkable by any measure, particularly considering the competitive challenges and regulatory complexities involved in maritime service provision. Margaret's face had gone pale as the implications of this revelation became clear. For 8 years she had dismissed me as a trophy wife, whose primary qualifications were physical appearance and social acceptability, while simultaneously benefiting from marina services provided by the very business empire she had been unknowingly patronizing through her family's recreational sailing activities. The conversation had attracted attention from adjacent tables, where other club members were beginning to recognize that significant information was being revealed about relationships and achievements that had apparently been misunderstood or unknown within their social circle. Dr. Richard Hampton, who had moved closer to overhear the discussion, interjected with observations that further expanded the scope of the revelation about Sterling Maritime Holdings, impact on club members, sailing experiences, and maritime investments. The transformation of Sterling Marina over the past 8 years has been extraordinary, Richard said with genuine appreciation that reflected his years of experience with marina services throughout New England. The facility improvements, service quality, and operational excellence have set new standards for luxury marina operations. The investment in infrastructure and technology represents millions of dollars in development that has benefited every boat owner in the region. Harrison Blackwood, who had been observing the conversation from a nearby table, approached with information that would further illuminate the scope of business achievement that had remained hidden within the Sterling family's social circle. Victoria, I think it's time everyone understood the full scope of what you've accomplished, Harrison said with respect that reflected his genuine appreciation for entrepreneurial success and business leadership. Sterling Maritime Holdings doesn't just operate individual marina facilities. The company has revolutionized marina services throughout New England, providing employment for hundreds of people while setting industry standards for customer service and operational excellence. The revelation was spreading throughout the dining room as club members shared information about the surprising connection between Victoria Sterling Chen and the Marina Empire that had enhanced their sailing experiences and protected their substantial maritime investments. The news created conversations that reflected genuine admiration for business achievement that had been accomplished through expertise and determination, rather than inherited advantage or family connections. Margaret finally found her voice, though her words carried a tone of disbelief that indicated difficulty processing information that contradicted fundamental assumptions she had maintained for years. Victoria, why didn't you tell us about your business success? She asked, her question revealing the beginning recognition that her dismissive treatment had been based on incomplete and inaccurate information about my professional capabilities and achievements. The question provided an opportunity to address the broader issues that had shaped 8 years of family relationships, characterized by assumption and dismissal, rather than genuine curiosity about individual accomplishments and professional contributions. Margaret, you never asked. I replied with quiet dignity that acknowledged the truth of our relationship dynamic without expressing anger or resentment that might have been justified by years of condescending treatment and systematic dismissal. Your assumptions about my capabilities and motivations made it clear that my professional activities were viewed as insignificant compared to my role as James's wife and your daughter-in-law. The honesty of this response created an uncomfortable moment of recognition among family members who were being forced to confront their own behavior and attitudes toward achievements they had never bothered to investigate or acknowledge. James spoke for the first time since the revelations had begun, his voice carrying uncertainty mixed with what appeared to be genuine surprise about the extent of business success that had been achieved independently of family resources or connections. "Victoria, I knew you managed business interests, but I never realized the scope of what you had built," James said with apparent sincerity that suggested his ignorance had been genuine rather than deliberately dismissive. "Why didn't you share more details about Sterling Maritime Holdings?" This question revealed the complex dynamics that had shaped our marriage and family relationships, where assumptions and lack of curiosity had prevented the kind of communication that might have led to greater understanding and mutual respect. "James, you showed no interest in the details of my professional responsibilities." I responded with factual accuracy that avoided accusation while acknowledging the reality of our relationship patterns. "When I mentioned business meetings or work commitments, you treated them as social obligations rather than professional requirements. Your family's assumptions about my motivations and capabilities made it easier to maintain separation between my personal and professional identities." Dr. Caldwell, who had been observing this family dynamic with the analytical perspective of someone accustomed to evaluating complex relationships and institutional structures, offered observations that placed the evening's revelations in broader context. This situation illustrates how assumptions and stereotypes can prevent recognition of achievement and capability, Patricia said with professional insight that reflected her experience in legal practice and business analysis. "Victoria's accomplishments represent exactly the kind of entrepreneurial success that should be celebrated and recognized, yet family relationships and social expectations apparently prevented proper acknowledgement of her business leadership and industry impact." The conversation continued as other club members approached to congratulate me on business achievements they had not previously connected with my identity as a Sterling family member. These interactions revealed the genuine respect that my professional work had earned within the maritime community, contrasting sharply with the dismissive treatment I had received from individuals who had made assumptions based on social position rather than demonstrated competence. Captain William Morrison, the club's commodore and a retired Navy officer whose maritime expertise commanded universal respect among members, offered perspective that elevated the evening's discussion beyond personal family dynamics to broader questions about recognition and achievement. "Mrs. Sterling Chen, your company's contributions to maritime safety and service excellence have been recognized throughout the industry," Captain Morrison said with formal respect that reflected both his military background and his genuine appreciation for operational competence and professional integrity. "The Sterling Maritime Holdings operation represents best practices in facility management and customer service that other operators attempt to emulate." This recognition from the club's senior leadership created a moment of validation that transcended family approval or social acceptance. The respect was based on demonstrated competence and measurable achievement, rather than inherited position or social connections, representing the kind of recognition that could only be earned through excellence and sustained performance. The revelation had transformed the evening from a routine social event into a moment of truth that exposed the limitations of assumptions and stereotypes, while demonstrating how genuine achievement could command respect from qualified evaluators who understood the expertise and commitment required for business success. Margaret's response to these developments would prove crucial for determining whether the Sterling family could acknowledge and respect accomplishment when it challenged their preconceived notions about individual capabilities and motivations. "Victoria, I owe you an apology," Margaret said with apparent sincerity that suggested genuine recognition of her errors in judgment and treatment. "I made assumptions about your interests and capabilities that were clearly wrong. Your business success is impressive by any measure, and I should have recognized and respected your achievements." This acknowledgement represented a significant development in family relationships, though it remained to be seen whether the change in understanding would translate into lasting modification of attitudes and behavior patterns that had characterized 8 years of marriage and family interaction. The evening continued with conversations that reflected a fundamental shift in how club members and family members perceived my identity and achievements. The revelation had created opportunities for genuine recognition and respect, based on demonstrated competence rather than social assumptions. while also exposing the limitations of stereotypes and prejudices that could prevent accurate assessment of individual worth and contribution. As the dinner service concluded and the evening's formal program began, I reflected on the broader significance of the revelations that had transformed a social event into a moment of personal and professional vindication that demonstrated the power of truth and achievement to overcome assumption and dismissal. The evening's formal program commenced with the traditional presentation of sailing awards and recognition of regatta participants whose achievements had distinguished them during the season's competitive events. Captain Morrison delivered remarks that celebrated both individual accomplishments and the collaborative spirit that characterized the club's maritime community, emphasizing how sailing excellence reflected broader principles of dedication, skill development, and perseverance that extended beyond recreational activities into professional and personal success. However, the atmosphere in the dining room had been fundamentally altered by the revelations about Sterling Maritime Holdings' ownership and operational scope. Conversations continued throughout the award presentations, with club members processing information that recontextualized their understanding of relationships and achievements within their social circle, while recognizing how assumptions and stereotypes had prevented accurate assessment of individual capabilities and contributions. I observed these discussions with professional interest, noting how maritime industry professionals responded differently than individuals whose knowledge was limited to recreational sailing experiences. The business owners and professionals who understood operational complexities and entrepreneurial challenges expressed genuine respect for the achievements represented by Sterling Maritime Holdings' growth and industry leadership. Their recognition was based on technical appreciation for the expertise and commitment required to build and manage complex marine service operations. In contrast, family members and social acquaintances who lacked business experience appeared more focused on the surprise of the revelation rather than substantive appreciation for the accomplishments involved. Their reactions suggested difficulty integrating new information about my professional identity with existing assumptions about my motivations and capabilities, reflecting broader challenges in how individuals process evidence that contradicts comfortable stereotypes and prejudices. Margaret Sterling had remained largely silent during the award presentations, her expression indicating internal processing of information that required significant adjustment to her understanding of family relationships and individual achievements. Her earlier apology had suggested recognition of errors in judgment, but her continued discomfort indicated that acknowledging mistakes was easier than fundamentally revising attitudes and assumptions that had shaped 8 years of interaction patterns. The situation reached a critical juncture during the coffee service, when club members began moving between tables to continue conversations and congratulate regatta participants on their sailing achievements. The informal mingling created opportunities for more detailed discussions about Sterling Maritime Holdings, while also providing possibilities for conflicts that had been suppressed during the formal dinner service. Eleanor Whitmore, Margaret's sister-in-law and a woman whose social commentary often reflected the unfiltered opinions that others expressed more diplomatically, approached our table with an expression that suggested she had been observing the evening's revelations with skeptical interest rather than admiring recognition. "Well, this has certainly been an evening of surprises," Eleanor announced with the kind of calculated loudness that ensured nearby tables could overhear her observations. Who would have imagined that our little Victoria had been conducting business operations all along? Though I suppose these days everyone claims to be an entrepreneur or business owner of some sort. The comment was delivered with Eleanor's characteristic skill at conveying dismissal through apparent acknowledgement, suggesting that while she had been forced to recognize my business activities, she remained skeptical about their significance or legitimacy. Her tone implied that Sterling Maritime Holdings might represent the kind of modest consulting arrangement or small-scale operation that individuals sometimes inflated beyond their actual scope or importance. Patricia Caldwell, who had been observing family dynamics with the analytical perspective that characterized her legal practice, responded with information that would prove particularly devastating to Eleanor's attempt at minimization and dismissal. "Eleanor, I believe you may be underestimating the scope and significance of Victoria's achievements," Patricia said with professional authority that reflected her extensive knowledge of maritime business operations and industry standards. Sterling Maritime Holdings controls over $300 million in marina properties and marine service operations. The company employs more than 400 people, and generates annual revenue that exceeds many Fortune 500 companies. These are not modest consulting arrangements, but substantial business achievements that have transformed Marina services throughout New England. The precision and scale of these financial details created immediate impact among table participants who possessed sufficient business knowledge to understand the implications of revenue numbers and employment figures that Patricia had provided. The information established Sterling Maritime Holdings as a major regional enterprise, rather than the small-scale operation that Eleanor had attempted to suggest. Eleanor's expression shifted to one of defensive skepticism, suggesting that she remained reluctant to acknowledge achievements that contradicted her preferred narrative about family relationships and individual capabilities. Her response would reveal whether she possessed sufficient character to accept evidence that challenged comfortable assumptions. "Those are certainly impressive claims," Eleanor said with calculated doubt that implied questions about the accuracy of information Patricia had presented. "Though I suppose financial figures can be interpreted in various ways, depending on how one calculates revenue and asset valuations." Harrison Blackwood, who had been listening to this exchange with growing irritation at Eleanor's dismissive attitude, intervened with observations that would further establish the credibility and significance of Sterling Maritime Holdings' business achievements. "Eleanor, there's no interpretation required," Harrison said with firm authority that reflected both his business experience and his direct knowledge of marina operations through years of customer experience. "Victoria's company has revolutionized marina services throughout the region. The facility management, customer service, and operational excellence are extraordinary by any measure. I've recommended Sterling Maritime Properties to dozens of boat owners, and every single recommendation has resulted in complete satisfaction and appreciation for the quality of service provided." Dr. Richard Hampton added perspective that emphasized the broader industry recognition that Sterling Maritime Holdings had achieved through consistent performance and innovation in marina management and marine services. "The company's reputation extends far beyond regional operations," Richard observed with respect that reflected his own professional standards and appreciation for operational excellence. Maritime industry publications have featured Sterling Maritime Holdings as an example of best practices in customer service and facility management. The business achievement represents genuine industry leadership rather than local success. Quote, "These endorsements from knowledgeable professionals created mounting evidence of business achievement that became increasingly difficult for Eleanor to dismiss or minimize." However, her response suggested that she remained committed to maintaining skeptical attitudes that protected her comfortable assumptions about social hierarchy and individual worth. "I'm sure Victoria has been very successful with her little marina business," Eleanor said with condescension that revealed her continued inability to acknowledge achievements that challenged her preconceptions. "Though I do wonder why she felt it necessary to keep such activities secret from family members who might have been supportive and encouraging of her entrepreneurial interests." This comment represented Eleanor's attempt to shift criticism from her own dismissive attitudes toward my alleged secretiveness, suggesting that family relationship problems resulted from my failure to communicate rather than their failure to demonstrate genuine interest in my professional activities and achievements. The accusation provided an opportunity to address directly the behavioral patterns and assumptions that had shaped 8 years of family interactions, while clarifying the reasons for maintaining separation between personal and professional identities. "Eleanor, I maintained professional privacy because family members consistently demonstrated that they viewed my capabilities and achievements as insignificant compared to my role as James's wife. I responded with calm dignity that avoided personal attacks while stating factual observations about relationship dynamics. When I mentioned business meetings or work commitments, they were dismissed as social obligations or hobby interests rather than professional responsibilities. The assumption that I had married James for financial security made it clear that my independent achievements would be viewed as irrelevant or potentially threatening to comfortable family narratives." The directness of this response created uncomfortable recognition among family members, who were being forced to confront their own behavior and attitudes toward achievements they had never bothered to investigate or acknowledge. The moment required honest assessment of relationship patterns that had persisted for years without challenge or correction. Margaret, who had been observing this confrontation with visible discomfort, attempted to redirect the conversation toward reconciliation, rather than continued conflict that might create lasting damage to family relationships. Perhaps we should focus on celebrating Victoria's success rather than analyzing past communication patterns. Margaret suggested with diplomatic authority that reflected her years of managing family dynamics and social situations that required careful navigation of competing interests and sensitivities. However, Eleanor appeared determined to continue her challenge to achievements she remained reluctant to acknowledge fully, suggesting that her skeptical attitudes reflected deeper resistance to evidence that contradicted established social hierarchies and assumptions about individual worth and capability. "I'm simply curious about the timing of these revelations." Eleanor persisted with calculated innocence that implied suspicion about motivations for disclosure. One might wonder whether tonight's announcement was strategically planned to create maximum impact during a social event where business achievements would receive public recognition and validation. This accusation represented Eleanor's final attempt to undermine the legitimacy of achievements she could not deny, by suggesting that their revelation was motivated by strategic calculation rather than honest response to direct questions and professional recognition from knowledgeable industry participants. Captain Morrison, who had been observing this exchange with the disciplined restraint that characterized his military background and club leadership responsibilities, provided authoritative perspective that would effectively conclude Eleanor's attempts at dismissal and challenge. "Mrs. Whitmore, I believe you may be missing the essential point of this evening's revelations," Captain Morrison said with formal authority that commanded immediate attention and respect from all table participants. "Mrs. Sterling Chen's business achievements represent exactly the kind of entrepreneurial success and professional excellence that our club has traditionally celebrated and honored. The scope and quality of Sterling Maritime Holdings' operations reflect dedication, expertise, and leadership that deserve recognition and respect, rather than skepticism or minimization." Quote, "The captain's intervention represented institutional validation that transcended family dynamics and social politics, establishing professional recognition based on demonstrated competence and measurable achievement, rather than inherited position or social connections." His support effectively ended Eleanor's attempts to challenge or dismiss achievements that had been documented and verified by multiple credible sources. Eleanor's response to this authoritative correction revealed the fundamental character limitations that had motivated her skeptical attitudes throughout the evening's revelations. "Of course, Captain Morrison, I meant no disrespect," Eleanor said with defensive retreat that indicated recognition that her challenge had been unsuccessful and inappropriate. "I'm sure we're all very proud of Victoria's business success, regardless of how it was achieved or when it was revealed to family members." The qualification, "regardless of how it was achieved," represented Eleanor's final attempt to maintain subtle criticism while appearing to accept defeat, suggesting that she remained unable to acknowledge genuine achievement without implying questions about legitimacy or methodology. James, who had been largely silent during this confrontation, finally spoke with apparent determination to address family dynamics that had been exposed by the evening's revelations. "Eleanor, Victoria's achievements speak for themselves," James said with firmness that reflected growing understanding of the unfair treatment his wife had received from family members whose assumptions and prejudices had prevented appropriate recognition and respect. "Her business success is remarkable by any measure, and she deserves our support and appreciation rather than skepticism or qualified acknowledgement." This support from James represented significant development in our relationship, suggesting that the evening's revelations had created opportunities for better understanding and mutual respect based on accurate information rather than comfortable assumptions and stereotypes. The confrontation had demonstrated how truth and evidence could overcome prejudice and dismissal when supported by credible witnesses and institutional authority, while also revealing the character limitations of individuals who remained committed to comfortable assumptions, despite overwhelming contrary evidence. As the evening's formal activities concluded and club members began preparing to depart, I reflected on how the confrontation had clarified fundamental differences between individuals who could acknowledge and respect achievement when it challenged their assumptions, and those whose prejudices were too fundamental to their worldview to be modified by mere facts and evidence. The evening had provided validation that transcended family approval or social acceptance, establishing professional recognition based on demonstrated competence and industry leadership that could not be dismissed or minimized by individuals whose opinions were based on assumption rather than knowledge and experience. The drive home from Anchor Bay Yacht Club unfolded in contemplative silence as James and I processed the evening's revelations and their implications for our marriage, family relationships, and future interactions within the Sterling family's social circle. The dramatic shift in family dynamics had created opportunities for enhanced understanding and mutual respect, while simultaneously exposing fundamental differences in values and character that would require careful navigation to preserve family harmony and personal integrity. James broke the silence as we approached our Beacon Hills neighborhood, his voice carrying a tone of genuine curiosity that represented a significant departure from the casual disinterest he had previously shown toward my professional activities and business responsibilities. "Victoria, I need to understand something that's been bothering me since the dinner conversation." James began with apparent thoughtfulness that suggested serious reflection about the evening's revelations. "If Sterling Maritime Holdings generates the kind of revenue that Patricia mentioned, why have we maintained separate financial arrangements throughout our marriage? Your business success clearly exceeds my trust fund income, yet we've operated under assumptions about financial contribution that were completely inaccurate." This question addressed fundamental aspects of our relationship structure that had been based on assumptions about financial capability and independence that the evening's revelations had proven entirely incorrect. The inquiry provided an opportunity to discuss broader issues of financial autonomy, professional identity, and marriage dynamics that had been shaped by stereotypes and incomplete information rather than honest communication and mutual understanding. "James, I maintained financial independence because I never wanted there to be questions about my motivations for marriage or concerns about access to Sterling family assets. I responded with the directness that the evening's revelations had made both possible and necessary. Your family's assumptions about my background and financial status made it clear that they viewed me as someone seeking economic security through marriage, rather than an individual capable of achieving independent financial success." The explanation revealed how family attitudes and social expectations had influenced fundamental decisions about marriage structure and financial arrangements that had persisted throughout 8 years of relationship without ever being directly addressed or reconsidered based on changed circumstances or improved understanding. James appeared to process this information with growing awareness of how family prejudices and assumptions had affected relationship dynamics and personal decisions in ways that neither of us had fully recognized or addressed during our marriage. His response would indicate whether the evening's revelations had created genuine opportunities for improved understanding and modified relationship patterns. "You're saying that you kept your business success private to protect yourself from accusations that you had married me for money, even though your income actually exceeded mine significantly," James said with what appeared to be developing recognition of the irony and complexity of the situation we had navigated throughout our marriage. "Precisely," I confirmed, appreciating his apparent effort to understand motivations and concerns that had shaped decisions about professional privacy and financial independence that had characterized our relationship from its beginning. Maintaining separation between my personal and professional identities prevented conflicts that might have arisen if your family had known about Sterling Maritime Holdings' success and profitability. The conversation continued as we entered our home, where the familiar environment provided a more comfortable setting for addressing complex personal and professional issues that the evening's revelations had brought into focus. The transformation from public social event to private marriage discussion allowed for more honest and detailed exploration of relationship dynamics and future possibilities. James settled into his study while I prepared tea, both of us apparently needing time to process the evening's developments, before continuing conversations that would likely reshape our understanding of marriage roles, family dynamics, and professional recognition within our social circle. The revelations had created opportunities for enhanced intimacy and mutual respect, while also requiring acknowledgement of mistakes and missed opportunities that had characterized 8 years of relationship. When I joined James in the study, he had retrieved his laptop and was reviewing what appeared to be financial documents related to family trust arrangements and investment portfolios that had provided his income throughout our marriage. His expression suggested that he was attempting to compare his family's financial resources with the business achievements that Sterling Maritime Holdings represented. "Victoria, I've been looking at trust fund distributions and investment performance over the past 8 years, James said with apparent seriousness that indicated genuine engagement with financial analysis and comparative assessment of income sources. If the revenue figures Patricia cited are accurate, your business success has significantly exceeded the Sterling family's passive investment returns. You've achieved financial independence that surpasses inherited wealth through entrepreneurial activity and business management. This recognition represented exactly the kind of acknowledgement that had been missing from our relationship and family dynamics throughout 8 years of marriage. The comparison of earned income versus inherited assets revealed fundamental differences in financial achievement and professional capability that the Sterling family had been unable or unwilling to recognize due to their prejudices and assumptions about individual worth and motivation. The business required substantial personal investment and professional risk that passive wealth management doesn't involve, I explained, providing context that distinguished entrepreneurial achievement from investment returns that required no active contribution or specialized expertise. Building Sterling Maritime Holdings demanded technical knowledge, operational management skills, customer relationship capabilities, and strategic planning that couldn't be acquired through family connections or inherited resources. James appeared to appreciate these distinctions between earned success and inherited advantage, suggesting that the evening's revelations had created opportunities for him to understand and respect types of achievement that his family background had not prepared him to recognize or value appropriately. "I'm beginning to understand why you maintained professional privacy," James said with apparent sincerity that reflected growing awareness of how family attitudes had influenced relationship dynamics and personal decisions throughout our marriage. "My family's assumptions about women's capabilities and motivations would have made it difficult for you to receive appropriate recognition for business achievements that clearly deserved respect and acknowledgement." The acknowledgement represented significant progress in understanding relationship issues that had persisted without resolution throughout our marriage. James's apparent willingness to recognize family prejudices and their impact on our relationship suggested possibilities for improved communication and mutual respect based on accurate information rather than comfortable assumptions. However, the conversation also revealed broader questions about how the evening's revelations would affect our future relationship with the Sterling family and their social circle, where attitudes about women's capabilities and appropriate roles might not change as readily as individual recognition within our marriage. "James, tonight's revelations will likely create ongoing challenges within your family and social circle," I observed, addressing practical concerns about future family interactions and social dynamics that would be affected by changed understanding of my professional identity and business achievements. Some family members may be able to acknowledge and respect business success that challenges their assumptions, while others may remain committed to comfortable prejudices, despite overwhelming contrary evidence. Eleanor Whitmore's response during the evening's confrontation had demonstrated how some individuals remained resistant to acknowledging achievement that contradicted established social hierarchies and assumptions about individual worth. Her attitude suggested that family harmony might require ongoing navigation of competing perspectives and values that could not be easily reconciled through evidence or rational discussion. James considered this observation with apparent seriousness, suggesting that he recognized the complexity of family dynamics and social expectations that would continue to influence our relationship and interactions within established social circles. "You're right that not everyone will be able to acknowledge your achievements appropriately." James agreed with what appeared to be realistic assessment of family character and limitations. "But perhaps it's time for our family to confront prejudices and assumptions that have prevented us from recognizing and respecting genuine accomplishment when it challenges comfortable stereotypes." This perspective indicated significant maturation in James's understanding of family dynamics and social responsibility that extended beyond personal relationship issues to broader questions about how privileged individuals could contribute to more accurate and respectful assessment of individual worth and capability. The conversation was interrupted by my phone ringing with a call from Marcus Chen, whose timing suggested that business emergencies did not respect social schedules or personal relationship discussions. The call would provide immediate demonstration of the ongoing professional responsibilities that the evening's revelations had finally made visible to James and the Sterling family. "Victoria, we have an update on the dock repairs that requires your immediate attention." Marcus began with the professional efficiency that characterized his communication style during crisis management situations. "The marine construction crew has identified additional structural issues that will extend the repair timeline and increase project costs beyond our initial estimates. The situation required immediate decision-making about resource allocation, contractor management, and client communication that would test my ability to maintain professional leadership while simultaneously addressing personal relationship issues that the evening's revelations had created. "What are the specific structural problems and cost implications?" I asked, shifting immediately into the analytical mode that business crises demanded while remaining aware that James was observing my professional decision-making process for the first time with complete understanding of its significance and scope. Marcus provided technical details about foundation problems and engineering challenges that would require specialized equipment and extended construction timelines to resolve safely and permanently. The additional costs would exceed $100,000, while the extended repair schedule would affect client satisfaction and facility operations during the peak summer sailing season. "Authorize the additional work and extended timeline," I instructed after rapid analysis of alternatives and risk assessment. Client safety and facility integrity are non-negotiable priorities, regardless of cost implications or scheduling inconvenience. Prepare detailed communication for all affected clients that explains the situation while reassuring them about our commitment to facility quality and customer service. The decision-making process demonstrated exactly the kind of professional responsibility and business judgment that the Sterling family had been unable to recognize or appreciate throughout 8 years of relationship. The crisis management required technical expertise, financial analysis, customer relationship skills, and strategic thinking that distinguished genuine business leadership from passive wealth management or inherited advantage. James observed this professional interaction with apparent interest and respect that represented significant departure from his previous casual disregard for my business activities and responsibilities. His expression suggested growing appreciation for the complexity and significance of operational challenges that required immediate attention and decisive leadership. After concluding the business call, I found James reviewing notes he had apparently taken during my conversation with Marcus, suggesting genuine engagement with professional issues that he had previously dismissed or ignored. "Victoria, that phone conversation illustrated exactly the kind of business responsibility and decision-making capability that I never fully understood or appreciated," James said with apparent sincerity that reflected changed perspective about my professional identity and achievements. "The technical knowledge, financial analysis, and customer service considerations you addressed in 10 minutes exceeded the complexity of most decisions I face regarding trust fund management. This comparison between entrepreneurial responsibility and passive wealth management revealed fundamental differences in professional engagement and contribution that the Sterling family's social position had prevented them from recognizing or valuing appropriately. The acknowledgement suggested possibilities for enhanced respect and understanding within our marriage based on accurate assessment of individual capabilities and achievements." The late evening provided additional opportunity for reflection about how the night's revelations would influence our future relationship and interactions with family members whose attitudes about women's capabilities and appropriate social roles might require time and continued evidence to modify substantially. "James, tonight represents a beginning rather than resolution of relationship challenges that have persisted throughout our marriage," I observed, addressing realistic expectations about family dynamics and social change that would require ongoing patience and strategic communication to achieve successfully. "I understand that changing 8 years of assumptions and prejudices will require sustained effort and continued demonstration of respect for achievements that challenge comfortable stereotypes," James replied with apparent recognition of the work required to transform relationship patterns and family attitudes that had been established over extended periods. The conversation concluded with mutual recognition that the evening's revelations had created opportunities for enhanced understanding and improved relationship dynamics while also requiring continued navigation of complex family and social expectations that would not change immediately or easily despite overwhelming evidence of business achievement and professional competence. As we prepared for sleep, I reflected on how truth and professional excellence had finally received appropriate recognition while acknowledging that sustained change would require ongoing demonstration of the values and capabilities that the evening's revelations had finally made visible to individuals whose prejudices had previously prevented accurate assessment of my worth and contributions. The morning following the yacht club revelations began with an unprecedented situation in the Sterling household. James had awakened before 6 a.m. and prepared coffee while reviewing business publications and maritime industry reports that he had apparently researched during the early hours. This departure from his typical morning routine of leisure reading and casual breakfast preparation indicated genuine engagement with professional topics that had previously held no interest for him. I discovered him in the kitchen reviewing a detailed article about Sterling Maritime Holdings that had appeared in Maritime Business Weekly 6 months earlier, featuring comprehensive analysis of our expansion strategy and industry leadership in luxury marina services. The publication had included photographs of our flagship facilities and interviews with industry experts who praised our innovative approaches to customer service and operational excellence. "Victoria, I had no idea that your business achievements had received this level of industry recognition," James said with apparent amazement as he showed me the article's detailed coverage of Sterling Maritime Holdings, growth trajectory, and market influence. "This analysis describes your company as setting new standards for marina operations throughout New England, with expansion potential that could influence industry practices nationally." The article represented exactly the type of professional recognition that had remained invisible to the Sterling family due to their lack of engagement with maritime industry publications and business developments outside their immediate social circle. Their assumptions about my professional activities had prevented them from discovering publicly available information about achievements that had been documented and celebrated within relevant professional communities. Industry publications have covered our expansion strategy and operational innovations regularly over the past 3 years. I explained while reviewing the article's technical analysis of our facility management systems and customer service protocols. The recognition reflects sustained performance and measurable results that have influenced industry standards and competitive practices among marina operators throughout the region. James continued examining the article with obvious fascination, his attention focused on financial performance metrics and growth projections that demonstrated Sterling Maritime Holdings' substantial business success and expansion potential. His engagement with technical business analysis represented significant departure from his typical morning activities, and suggested genuine interest in understanding professional achievements that he had previously dismissed or ignored. The revenue figures and employment numbers in this article correspond exactly with what Patricia Caldwell mentioned last night. James observed with apparent recognition that the yacht club revelations had been supported by documented evidence rather than personal claims or exaggerated representations. "Your business success is substantial and verifiable, not dependent on family approval or social recognition for its legitimacy and significance." This understanding represented crucial development in James's appreciation for business achievement that existed independently of Sterling family acknowledgement or social acceptance. The recognition that professional success could be measured through industry standards and performance metrics, rather than inherited position or family connections, indicated potential for enhanced respect and understanding within our marriage relationship. The morning's reflection was interrupted by another emergency call from Marcus Chen, whose timing reinforced the reality that business leadership required constant availability and immediate response capabilities that distinguished entrepreneurial responsibility from passive investment management or inherited wealth administration. "Victoria, we have received a significant development that requires your personal attention and strategic decision-making." Marcus began with controlled excitement that suggested positive rather than problematic news requiring crisis management response. "Coastal Marina Development Corporation has approached us about a potential acquisition offer for the entire Sterling Maritime Holdings portfolio." The information represented exactly the type of major business opportunity that required sophisticated analysis and strategic thinking about long-term company direction, market positioning, and personal professional objectives that extended beyond immediate operational concerns. The acquisition inquiry would test every aspect of business knowledge and strategic planning capability that I had developed through 8 years of company building and industry leadership. "What are the preliminary terms and timeline for consideration?" I asked while simultaneously calculating the financial implications and strategic considerations that would influence my response to this unexpected development. Marcus provided detailed information about the proposed acquisition structure, financial terms, and timeline for due diligence and negotiation processes that would determine whether the offer represented genuine opportunity for enhanced growth and industry impact, or merely represented financial speculation without understanding of operational excellence and market positioning that Sterling Maritime Holdings had achieved. The proposed valuation exceeds $400 million for the complete portfolio, with potential for performance-based additional compensation tied to continued growth and market expansion. Marcus reported with professional precision that reflected his own appreciation for the significance of this business development. The acquisition offer represented validation of business achievement that transcended family recognition or social acceptance, providing market-based assessment of company value and industry leadership that had been built through technical expertise, operational excellence, and strategic vision rather than inherited advantage or family connections. James observed my analysis of this business opportunity with obvious interest and apparent respect for the complexity of strategic decision-making that major acquisitions required. His attention to financial details and market implications suggested growing understanding of business leadership responsibilities that he had not previously encountered through passive trust fund management activities. Victoria, this acquisition offer represents recognition of extraordinary business success, James said with apparent awe at the financial scope and industry significance of the proposal. The valuation exceeds most established family businesses and represents achievement that clearly surpasses inherited wealth through entrepreneurial activity and professional excellence. The recognition represented exactly the type of acknowledgement that had been missing from our relationship throughout 8 years of marriage, during which my business activities had been dismissed as minor consulting work or hobby interests, rather than substantial professional achievements deserving respect and recognition. The offer requires careful analysis of strategic implications beyond immediate financial considerations. I explained while reviewing preliminary acquisition terms and assessing compatibility between Coastal Marina Development's expansion objectives and Sterling Maritime Holdings' operational philosophy and customer service standards. Any acquisition partner must demonstrate commitment to operational excellence and customer satisfaction standards that have built our industry reputation and client loyalty. The strategic analysis required consideration of how acquisition might affect employment for our 400 employees, service quality for existing clients, and continuation of operational innovations that had distinguished Sterling Maritime Holdings within the competitive marina services marketplace. These factors extended beyond financial calculations to encompass broader responsibilities and values that had guided company development and industry leadership. James appeared impressed by the comprehensiveness of considerations that acquisition decisions required, suggesting recognition that business ownership involved complex responsibilities and strategic thinking that extended far beyond profit maximization or personal financial benefit. How long will evaluation of this acquisition offer require? James asked with apparent understanding that major business decisions demanded thorough analysis rather than immediate response based on initial financial attraction. Comprehensive due diligence and strategic assessment will require approximately 6 weeks. I responded while calculating the timeline for financial analysis, operational evaluation, and strategic planning that would enable informed decision-making about this significant business opportunity. The process must include detailed review of Coastal Marina Development's operational capabilities, financial stability, and compatibility with our company culture and customer service standards. The conversation was interrupted by arrival of Margaret Sterling, whose unexpected morning visit suggested that the previous evening's revelations had created sufficient concern or curiosity to prompt immediate follow-up discussion rather than allowing family processing time before addressing relationship and business issues that had been exposed during the yacht club dinner. Margaret appeared somewhat tentative as she entered our kitchen, her expression indicating uncertainty about appropriate protocols for discussing business achievements that had fundamentally altered her understanding of family relationships and individual capabilities. Her presence provided opportunity to address family dynamics and future interaction patterns that would be influenced by changed recognition of my professional identity and achievements. "Victoria, I hope you don't mind my stopping by unannounced," Margaret began with uncharacteristic deference that reflected recognition that our relationship dynamic had been altered by revelations about business success and financial independence that contradicted 8 years of assumptions about my motivations and capabilities. "I've been thinking about last night's conversation and realized that I need to understand better how to appropriately acknowledge and support your professional achievements moving forward." The acknowledgement represented significant development in Margaret's willingness to modify relationship patterns and family attitudes that had been based on incomplete information and prejudiced assumptions, rather than accurate understanding of individual accomplishments and professional contributions. "Margaret, I appreciate your willingness to reconsider our relationship dynamics. I responded with diplomatic acknowledgement that recognized her apparent effort to address past mistakes while avoiding detailed discussion of specific incidents that might complicate future family harmony and mutual respect. I realized that my assumptions about your professional activities were completely inaccurate. Margaret continued with apparent sincerity that suggested genuine recognition of errors in judgment rather than merely strategic adjustment to changed circumstances. Your business achievements deserve recognition and respect that I failed to provide due to my own prejudices and limited understanding of entrepreneurial success. This admission represented exactly the type of accountability and growth that would be necessary for improved family relationships based on mutual respect and accurate understanding of individual worth and contributions. Margaret's willingness to acknowledge mistakes and modify attitudes suggested potential for enhanced family dynamics that could accommodate diverse forms of achievement and professional identity. James contributed to this conversation by sharing information about the acquisition offer and its implications for understanding the scope and significance of Sterling Maritime Holdings within the broader maritime industry and regional business community. Mother, Victoria received a $400 million acquisition offer this morning. James announced with obvious pride that contrasted sharply with his previous casual dismissal of my business activities and achievements. The proposal validates her company's industry leadership and demonstrates business success that exceeds most established family enterprises. Margaret's expression indicated surprise mixed with what appeared to be genuine appreciation for the magnitude of business achievement that this acquisition offer represented. Her response would indicate whether she possessed sufficient character flexibility to acknowledge and celebrate success that had been accomplished independently of Sterling family resources or social connections. Victoria, that acquisition offer represents extraordinary validation of your business expertise and industry leadership, Margaret said with apparent respect that reflected recognition of achievement that clearly exceeded inherited wealth or passive investment management. I'm beginning to understand the scope of what you've accomplished through entrepreneurial activity and professional excellence. The conversation continued with detailed discussion of Sterling Maritime Holdings, operational philosophy, customer service innovations, and industry influence that had been invisible to Sterling family members due to their assumptions about women's capabilities and their lack of engagement with maritime business developments outside their immediate recreational interests. Margaret asked informed questions about facility management, customer relationship strategies, and expansion planning that indicated genuine interest in understanding business operations rather than merely offering polite acknowledgement of achievements she could not comprehend or appreciate fully. Victoria, I would like to learn more about your company's operations and industry contributions, Margaret said with apparent sincerity that suggested authentic desire for better understanding rather than social obligation to express appropriate interest. Perhaps you could arrange for me to visit Sterling Marina and observe the facility management and customer services that have built your industry reputation. This request represented significant development in Margaret's willingness to engage actively with my professional identity and business achievements, rather than maintaining polite distance from activities that challenged her comfortable assumptions about appropriate family roles and individual capabilities. Passive Nary as well. I would be pleased to provide comprehensive facility tours and operational briefings that would give you better understanding of marina management and the industry leadership that Sterling Maritime Holdings has achieved. I responded with genuine appreciation for her apparent interest in learning about business operations and professional achievements that had remained invisible throughout 8 years of family relationships. The morning's developments had created opportunities for enhanced family understanding and mutual respect based on accurate information about individual accomplishments and professional contributions, rather than comfortable assumptions and inherited prejudices that had prevented appropriate recognition of business success and industry leadership. As Margaret prepared to leave and James returned to his business publication research, I reflected on how truth and professional excellence had begun to transform family relationships while creating possibilities for continued growth and learning that could benefit all participants willing to acknowledge and respect genuine achievement, regardless of its source or compatibility with established social expectations. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.